Amen. Lutheran churches all over the country are reading this Bible story this weekend. And I just have to ask, the story of the bridesmaids, the wise and the foolish bridesmaids, and the bridegroom who closed out half of the bridesmaids for being foolish, does that sound like the Jesus you learned about in Sunday school? I mean, the Jesus I know teaches everyone to give to the least of these, and to love their neighbor, and to turn the other cheek. The Jesus I know says things like we heard in last week's gospel: blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the hungry, blessed are the grieving, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I mean, are last week's Jesus and this week's Jesus even the same person? Can you picture Jesus telling this parable about being prepared, about stocking up oil for yourself, and don't you dare share it, or you might find the door to the kingdom of heaven slammed shut? Thanks be to God? Wow. I had to chuckle to myself a little bit as I read this and thought, well, what would it be like if I took some of the other sayings of Jesus and meshed them together with what we heard Jesus saying tonight? Like that portion from Matthew 6 where Jesus says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Instead, worry about your oil. That's the main thing. Worry about whether you have enough for you and forget about everyone else." That doesn't really work. Or maybe you've heard those words from Jesus in Matthew 7 where he says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Knock and the door will be open to you." Unless, of course, you're late and the bridegroom returns, in which case you might as well forget it. No, that's not right either. Or this one: "In everything you do, do unto others as you would have them do unto you," except when it comes to oil, which changes all the rules. See what I'm talking about? The Bible reading for today is a little deflating. It's a bit of a downer. This parable challenges most of the things I was taught about Jesus in Sunday school. What does this parable mean? Does it mean we're supposed to keep what we have to ourselves, to take care of number one, or else we're not going to make it into the wedding banquet or the kingdom of heaven? Is that the message here? Be prepared, hang on to your oil, and remember only a fool gives it away? Well, that's depressing. But Jesus normally refuses to leave things that depressing. Usually there's hope involved. So let's take another look at this parable. One thing I noticed after reading it about 10 or 15 times was that, interestingly enough, it doesn't say whether the bridesmaids had any oil at home. It doesn't tell us if the wise ones were hoarding it or the foolish ones hadn't had time yet to go out and purchase it. It doesn't tell us what they had in their savings accounts or how generous they were with their worldly goods. For all we know, the bridesmaids were down to their very last flask of oil. And maybe the foolish bridesmaids were sitting on barrels of the stuff at home, and the parable just doesn't tell us. The story's only concern seems to be what they brought with them, what they were carrying with them on their person. And that's significant, I think. Maybe this isn't a story about how much oil you have. Instead, it's a story about the oil you carry with you. And the parable is very clear. All 10 bridesmaids had lamps, but 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The wise ones brought flasks of oil with their lamps while they waited for the bridegroom. The foolish ones showed up with lamps and nothing to keep them going. And when your lamp goes out, you may have gallons of oil sitting at home, but it's not going to do you any good there, is it? So it's about the oil that you carry with you. And that got me thinking. One thing I like to do when I'm reading, especially a parable, because Jesus is using that as a way to teach us, is to try and figure out, where do I fit in that story? So in this story, who are we? The bridesmaids. And in this story, the bridesmaids, you and I, have lamps, have a light, have lamps that need to stay lit. A fire we have with us that needs oil to keep the flame burning and strong. And what if we see that fire within us as our hearts or our soul or our passion for God? And it's the thing that keeps us going. And the oil is the thing that keeps that fire burning. So this story is about Jesus being concerned about you running out of the thing that keeps you going. The oil of your spirit, the oil of your heart. A Christian with no oil can't be a light to the world for anyone, no matter how hard they want to, if they are running on empty. So let's think a little bit more personally. What is your oil, your fuel, the thing that keeps you going, the thing that keeps your light burning? What fills you up? I'm not talking about Thanksgiving dinner, which will definitely fill us up in just a week and a half. What is it that recharges you, that keeps your soul aflame when you're feeling low? What drives your spirit to continued life? What keeps you from running dry? God has wired us, our hearts, to be fired by His grace and love and blessings. So what are they for you? I want to show you one of mine. This is a leaf that I was given today as a present from my 4.5-year-old. I've been gone overnight with one of his brothers, spending time with my parents, and being gone for 24 hours is a big deal in my household. And so when I pulled into the driveway, my 4.5-year-old ran up with this leaf that's full of holes and brown spots and said, "Mommy, Mommy, I got this for you." Those moments are like oil to my lamp, like fuel for my flame. They keep me going. In our baptisms, we're called to be a light to the world for all God's people to see. But what happens when we've run out of oil? It's a good thing to consider at some point in our lives, because maybe we've come up to that point in our lives. We've run dry, we've run on empty. We have a lot of responsibilities. Think of all the things that are depending on you tonight, this week, this month, this year. I'm a pastor. I'm a mom of 4 boys. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a teacher, a friend, a colleague, a homeowner, and a caregiver. Think of how easy it is to run out of oil when our lives are filled with all of those expectations. And what happens in those moments when we run dry, when we forget our fuel? Maybe for you it's any variety of things, or maybe for me it's when a child walks into the kitchen and says, "What's for dinner?" And I say, "Leftovers," and the kid says, "I don't like that, I hate leftovers." And then I've morphed into Godzilla, and then it's just all a lost cause because I was running on empty. When the arrow on the gas tank points to E, you're going to run out of fuel, out of oil. It's like when a 1-year-old doesn't get a nap, he's going to crash. It's so true. When you haven't had a conversation with your spouse in 3 weeks that hasn't revolved around carpooling, logistics, your marriage gets dry. If you've worked 70-hour weeks for longer than you care to think about, you and your relationships are going to suffer. There are some kinds of fuel that just aren't negotiable. Some kinds of oil that you can't borrow from anyone else. You can't borrow someone else's peace of mind or their passion for God. You can't say to your friend, "You have a happy marriage. Could you just give me some of that?" It doesn't work that way. You have to find it for yourself. You have to figure out what fills you up spiritually, emotionally, physically, and then make sure you have some not just stored at home, but some that you carry with you every single minute of the day, because that's how often you'll need it. You and I will run out of fuel. Time does run out. The hour gets late. Everyone gets sleepy. We all doze off. We put things off saying, "One of those days I'll get around to that. One of these days I'll quit working so hard. Or I'll put in that quality time with my family. One of those days I'm just going to stop writing the checks for things and really get involved in something important. One of those days." we all doze, we all put it off, and then the shout goes up. He's coming. It's time. The bridegroom is here. The banquet's about to begin, and one of those days becomes today. And do you have your flask of oil on you? Unless you find yourself wondering, maybe Jesus is giving me this warning because I need to be afraid and I need to worry that if I'm not ready and my tank's not full, I'm not going to be led into the eternal kingdom after we die. But I don't think that's the case. I tend to think that because this passage takes place right before Matthew's gospel shows Jesus heading to the cross, where Jesus will die for us and rise for us, that Jesus was already on his mission to ensure that the kingdom would come for us eternally when we die. But he also cared deeply, so deeply, about God's kingdom coming to us now, here, while we're still alive. Yes, Jesus cares about your eternal destination. In fact, he secured it for you. But Jesus cares just as much about your earthly journey, that you might be full of life, love, compassion for yourself and others. And Jesus is warning in this parable that if we aren't prepared, if we don't carry with us the things that truly matter, we're going to miss out on the kingdom coming here, right now. Dear ones, today is a chance to wake up and live for today, to appreciate the life you have because of the life Jesus gave. Jesus died on a cross for you and for me so that we'd be forgiven and find life now and not waste it sleeping or running on empty, but fill it with life and love. So, love your kids today. Serve others today. Take a nap today. Build a puzzle today. Walk your dog. Call a friend. Say yes to something or say no to something. Discover what gifts God has given you today. Come to know how God fills you and recharges your soul. Get busy living, and you'll notice that God is all around you, just waiting for you to notice the kingdom is here today. Live like there's no tomorrow, because as Jesus mentioned, he is coming soon, so very soon. Amen.